We're really lucky to have so many great European cities right on our doorstep, just waiting to be rediscovered.
I don't know anywhere else you can get this many different sounds, colours and, of course, smells. Look at that.
And a weekend escape is a brilliant and easy way to explore them.
I am loving this. Feast your eyes on Venice.
So I'm going to have loads of amazing food.
Go on, baby. Sizzle. Sizzle! I may have found the best food in Amsterdam.
See some amazing sights.
Colosseum!
This is the famous Checkpoint Charlie.
Wow, this is stunning.
And check out the culture of each city.
You are the bravest people in Europe, and maybe the craziest.
Guys, I'm inside the fountain. I'm part of the Trevi Fountain.
So I'll be packing lots
Come and have a look at this.
into my 3-day trips.
Oh, wow. We're up on the roof. There is beer, there is wine, there is sunshine music, and there are lots and lots of smiles.
Showing you how to get the most out of a weekend getaway.
I feel like Audrey Hepburn.
Germany's bustling capital is only a short 2-hour flight away, so it's perfect for a weekend getaway. This city has a rich and sometimes troubled history, but today it's one of the coolest cities on the continent, with distinctive food and art and nightlife to match. I've never been to Berlin before.
Thank you.
So having arrived in the city centre for late afternoon, I'm excited to make the most of my first day.
Oh, yes. I am in Berlin, and I have wanted to come here for years. My hotel is actually a bit of a walk away, but I've got the cab driver to drop me off here because there's something I really wanted to see. I think probably the most iconic monument in Berlin. See that? That is the Brandenburg Gate.
Built in 1791, this spectacular structure was a symbol of power for the Kingdom of Prussia, one of the many states that would go on to form the nation of Germany in 1871.
This is a very popular tourist destination with visitors from all over the world. It's got bars, of course, restaurants and hotels. Everything you would expect to find in a modern European capital city, which quite frankly is amazing because 30 years ago, this was a no-go zone. Over there was the Berlin Wall. This was all concrete, barbed wire and watchtowers as soldiers from east and west nervously faced each other with loaded guns. I want to know how this place went from would-be war zone to one of my must-visit cities for a long weekend.
With so much to pack into my 3 days, I've found a hotel in the central Mitte district on an island in the middle of the River Spree. The area around here is packed with some of the most impressive architecture in the city.
Hey, hello, sir. You look like me.
Yes, I'm the same like you.
Listen, my name is Wallace.
Yes, sir.
I have a reservation.
Time is tight on my first day, so I'm leaving my bag and heading straight out. Now, when I arrive somewhere, I love to start by getting stuck into the local food. And for Berliners, there's one type of street food that's virtually become a national dish.
This is a shop selling currywurst. It's one of the nation's favourites. 800 million of these sold every year, 70 million of them in Berlin. Now, I think it's time for me to find out what all the fuss is about. Currywurst, please.
It may not look like the most appetising thing you've ever seen, but I've still got high hopes.
So, this is a sausage that has been steamed and then fried, and then it's covered in ketchup and spoonfuls of curry powder. It's got a fabulous history. Just after the war, Berlin was split into 4 zones. And this actually comes out of the British-controlled zone. It was an enterprising German that managed to get ketchup and curry powder from British soldiers. That was it. The currywurst was born. Now, anyone who's been to a football match has had a hot dog covered in ketchup. That is exactly the same. That's also got the additional heat of curry powder. All right, Berlin, that works for me.
The currywurst may have been born from Berlin's sometimes difficult post-war years, but there's far more to this city's recent past than just the Cold War. And for my first night in the city, I want to experience some of its pleasure-loving side.
In the 1920s and 1930s, this city was an absolutely must-go-to for anybody who wanted to sample the wilder side of European culture. I know a place where you can get a little taste of that crazy scene today.
The musical cabaret, set in 1930s Berlin, has been one of my favourites ever since I first saw the movie, and I'm heading to a bar that's named after the lead character.
Hello, sir. A beer. Can I have a beer? Big German one.
The biggest we have?
Yeah. I'm in the mood.
The bar's owner is Sebastian Ungru.
Why is this called Sally Bowles Club? I'm a big fan of cabaret.
You know that cabaret is based on novels written by Christopher Isherwood. It's a British author. He used to live around the corner. And everything in the book was around here. The hotel, the food store, the Kit Kat Club, that is all just a few steps away from here.
You are kidding me.
Yeah, completely. Cabaret is the connection of different styles, anything you can imagine, like political satire, sexy women dancing, sexy boys dancing.
So it's a cross between, really, I suppose, song and dance clubs, strip clubs and comedy clubs.
Sure.
Where did cabaret come from? Do you know?
Yeah, it started in the end of the 19th century in Paris, then made its way to Berlin. And since it wasn't allowed in Berlin to dance at all until New Year's Eve 1918.
What, in Germany you couldn't dance?
Yeah, it was the time of the First World War, so nobody was allowed to dance.
Mate, we had the First World War in Britain, we still danced. Right, OK, so end of the First World War, the Kaiser abdicates, and then what happens?
And then everybody was free trying out his borders, trying alcohol.
And when people were allowed to do their own thing, they went wild.
Yeah, they went wild.
Do you still play music here? Do you have a bit of a cabaret here?
For sure, we have one tonight, so if you join us for the show, it would be lovely.
Hey, you try stopping me. Fabulous. Well, I didn't expect this, and I'm very much looking forward to this.
What good is sitting alone in your room? Come hear the music play.
It's amazing to think that characters like Sally Bowles in Cabaret were based on real people that lived just round the corner from this club. So for a fan of the musical like me, this is pure heaven.
And I love a cabaret.
Coming up, I explore some of the most gripping parts of Berlin's past.
Just one soldier with a nervous finger could have triggered World War III.
And get a taste of Germany's legendary beer culture.
That's lovely.
It's my second morning in Berlin. And on a short 3-day break like this, there's no time for lie-ins. So I'm heading out to a street-side cafe for an early bite. A traditional German breakfast centres on cold meats and bread.
Aha! Oh, danke. Look at that.
And luckily, this giant slap-up platter tastes just as good as it looks.
Lovely rye bread with little seeds in it. Really rich, deep liver sausage. Look, this is lovely. This is definitely what I would choose. You go and get your bacon and eggs if you want, all right? I'm happy.
After my lunch-sized breakfast, I'm all powered up for another day in this extraordinary city. Ever since I was a child, I've been fascinated by stories of Berlin as a centre for spies and defectors at the time of the Cold War, when the city was divided between East and West.
I was born in 1964, which means I grew up in the middle of the Cold War. And I remember being really nervous about it, frightened that a nuclear bomb was going to land on our heads. And I've always been amazed by this city. I don't quite honestly understand how two groups of people living in the same city could wake up in the morning and find themselves in completely separate countries.
Jens Malms runs tours of some of Berlin's biggest Cold War sites.
Good to meet you. I've been really looking forward to this.
So I've signed up to a morning's exploring.
What I've never understood is why Berlin was divided.
Well, right after World War II, Germany as a whole was divided by the four allies into four sectors. There was a British sector, a French sector, American sector, and the Soviet sector. But Berlin, the capital city, which was laying in the east, seemed to be so important that the Western Allies wanted to have a piece of Berlin as well.
I didn't realise. So Berlin was right in the middle of the Russian-controlled zone.
Absolutely.
Because West Berlin was effectively an island entirely surrounded by the enemy Soviet state, it was a hotbed of tension between East and West. To see some of the best sites from the era, there are plenty of Cold War tours you can book, but Jens' tour boasts a particularly special mode of transport.
Whoa! Hey, that is cool. That is cool. I tell you what, back in the 80s, you had to be Australian to have one of these. Thank you. Tell me about this car. Why a camper?
Well, you know, in the 1970s, everyone had one of those. Well, in the West, of course, not in the East.
The first stop on Jens' magic bus tour is one of the 6 checkpoints where those with clearance could cross between East and West. And if you've ever seen a spy movie like Octopussy or The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, you'll have probably heard of the most notorious checkpoint of all.
This is the famous Checkpoint Charlie.
No!
Yeah.
Was that actually it? Is that the building?
Well, that's a replica, but this is where the original one was.
Why do we know Checkpoint Charlie? It couldn't have been the only checkpoint.
But this was the only international one for non-Germans. This was an US-run checkpoint.
This is why we know Checkpoint Charlie.
Absolutely.
Because American or British people could only use this checkpoint.
In 1961, this checkpoint became the site of one of the most tense standoffs of the entire Cold War.
The Americans wanted to show strength, and they drove here with tanks. The tank driver just stopped at the borderline, and the Russian tanks were coming from the other side, and they were facing each other for 16 hours.
The world must have been holding its breath.
Just one soldier with a nervous finger could have triggered World War III.
Here.
Here.
That's a massive thing.
Yeah.
We should think ourselves very lucky.
Absolutely.
Driving around the city today, you won't see much of the famous wall that once encircled West Berlin, since most of it was demolished in 1990 after the fall of communism. But near Potsdamer Platz, in the centre of the city, you can still see part of the structure that once divided Berlin.
This is the east side, right?
Absolutely.
That is the west. Over there, I can buy Levi jeans and Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Here, I've got more beetroot and blue overalls.
Well,
Yeah.
no bananas.
No bananas here.
No.
You know, that's the famous wall.
Yes.
And that doesn't look that difficult to get over, to be honest. I mean, a good pole vaulter could get over that.
Yes, but the Berlin Wall actually didn't consist out of one wall. There were two walls running parallel. And in between the walls, there were watchtowers with snipers, there were mines.
But people still managed to escape, didn't they?
They used hot air balloons, they were digging tunnels. Right from the top of that building, a family made it with a ropeway to the west.
Zip wire.
Yeah.
I love them.
The wall finally came down on one dramatic night in November 1989.
And you know, back then, people had no mobile phones and they were just confused because there were so many East German cars in the West all of a sudden. What are all the East German cars are making here? Well, the wall just opened. No, you're kidding. I don't believe you.
It really took everybody by surprise.
Absolutely.
The Cold War might be over today, but Jens tells me not everyone in the city is happy to see it gone. In fact, he's dropped me off at one place where the spirit of the old East Germany, known officially as the German Democratic Republic, or GDR, is still alive and well.
Hello? What is this? Why have you got a hotel that looks like it's in 1973?
Genau, wir hatten die Idee, den Touristen sozusagen ein bisschen die DDR näher zu bringen, indem man auch sozusagen so wohnen kann wie in der DDR.
So is this to give people a taste of what life was like in communist East Berlin?
Genau.
It surprises me that people may be nostalgic for communist rule. What do people miss?
Ich glaube, dass die Menschen heute besonders den Zusammenhalt und die Herzlichkeit vermissen. Es gibt doch schon mehr heutzutage Konkurrenzkampf unter den Menschen. Dog eat dog.
Can I see more of the hotel? Can I see a room?
Yes, no problem.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Missing the old camaraderie of East Germany is one thing, but I'm wondering what it's like to actually sleep in a communist bedroom.
I mean, anybody my age will remember stuff like this. The laminate furniture, the flowery wallpaper, the orange furniture, orange curtains. I tell you what, if the whole of communist East Berlin was living like this, they might as well have come to the council estate in Peckham, where I was brought up.
The Ostel experience might not be five-star luxury, but if you want to find out what it felt like in the old East Berlin, this is definitely the place to get a taste of it. After a morning getting to grips with the more austere side of Berlin's history, I'm ready to relax. And what could be a more German way to kick back than a visit to a beer garden?
Well, I'm smiling because this is the Pratergarten. This is Berlin's oldest beer garden, serving the city's finest brews since 1837. During the summer, they can get up to 600 people in here. 600 people drinking beer in the sunshine. That's Greggy heaven. Liv.
Hi, good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
My pal for the afternoon, Liv Fleischacker, is one of the garden's biggest fans.
So today, I think I would love for you to try a Berliner Weiße, which is a really, really typical Berlin-style beer. It's a wheat beer. There are two variations that you can have. You can have one with syrup and one without.
Beer and syrup.
That is correct.
All right.
Hallo. Wir haben hier zwei Berliner Weiße, bitte.
I love beer, and these ones are so much cheaper than at home, so it seems only right to do as Berliners do.
Okay, Liv.
Here we go. So I think maybe we should go ahead and try with the original no syrup, so you kind of have the palate, and then we can move on to the syrup.
That smells like British beer.
Okay, that's a good start, I'm assuming.
That tastes like somebody has dropped malt vinegar into beer.
But we are in Berlin. We like our things sour and salty here.
Having the beer the authentic way on its own, I'm intrigued to see if it's any better with the syrup.
Right.
This will be very sweet.
That's lovely.
There we go.
That's like beer with some sugar and a hint of vanilla. That's almost like an alcoholic liquid cookie.
It's what we're known for. It's what we do best.
Liv, you know, I doubted you for a moment, but this is good. Listen, the Germans obviously take their beer very seriously. There's so many varieties. They're almost into their beer as much as the French are into their wines.
True.
Why?
In 1516, there was a German beer purity law passed that basically stated that beer is only allowed to be brewed with 4 ingredients. So you have barley, hops, water, and yeast, and people knew exactly what they'd be getting, and there was a consistency to it.
I love that. So anywhere in Europe, I wouldn't know what I was getting. But if I came to Germany, if I drank German beer, I would know it was pure.
After 1516, yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Given how easily all this Berliner Weiss goes down, it's just as well that the Pratergarten is also a great place to grab a bite. And on the menu today is a Berlin favourite.
What is this?
So here we have Königsberger Klopse, which is a very, very traditional Prussian dish. It's basically veal meatballs cooked in a cream sauce. It usually has either anchovy or herring as a base for like a little bit of a salty funk.
Veal, fish, and cream.
Yes.
Interesting combination.
Yes, daring combination.
The super salty flavours from the pickled capers and anchovies means this dish isn't exactly what I'm expecting.
I've never had anything like it.
It is unusual.
Funny, Liv, this is not what I think about when I consider German cuisine. What I consider is great, beautiful sausages and piles of sauerkraut, not meatballs and cream and capers.
But generally, when people think about food in Germany, they think about Bavarian food, so they think schnitzel, they think pretzels, they think Weisswurst, and those are really of the south and not of the north, whereas this is very much a Prussian dish.
You prefer the north, don't you?
I do, yes. But I'm also from Berlin, so I'm representing the city-state.
Brilliant.
Coming up, I learn about one of the darkest moments in Berlin's history.
The sort of 16 square kilometres of Berlin was just completely devastated.
Crying out loud.
And meet a legend of this city's nightlife scene. Fancy heading with a mate for your own weekend away? Well, here's your chance to pick from one of these awesome European spots that we visited this series. You could head to Istanbul to explore the Grand Bazaar, or perhaps Venice's famous waterways are more your style. Find your family tartan in Edinburgh? Or has Munich, Athens or Budapest tickled your fancy instead? Whatever your choice, we'll get you there and put you up in a hotel for 2 nights in the thick of it all. You'll enjoy a local activity on us, and we'll include £1,000 spending money too. So to enter, text FUN to 65555 or post your name and phone number to FUN, PO Box 7557 Derby DE1 0NP. Text costs £2 plus 1 message at standard network rate. Lines close at midday on the date shown on screen, and 3 working days later for postal entries. Rules and privacy policy at channel5.com/win. Good luck. It's the second day of my long weekend in Berlin, and I'm packing in as much as I can. This afternoon, I've decided to visit the sites related to the most infamous part of the city's history, the Third Reich. But many of the sites relating to the Nazi era aren't always easy to spot. So to help me explore this hidden history, I've booked myself a guide.
Mike.
Hello.
I'm Greg. Are you going to give me a history lesson?
I certainly am, Greg.
I love you.
Mike Stack from Insider Tours shows visitors to the city what's left from this notorious period.
What a beautiful square. This wouldn't look out of place in the middle of Rome. Where are we?
Now, this square is known today as Bebelplatz. It is a beautiful square. It was built basically in the 18th century under the reign of a very famous Prussian king called Frederick II. That's got an infamous past also. This was the location of the 1933 Nazi book burning in Berlin.
What books were they burning? Jewish books?
They destroyed definitely Jewish books, or communist, socialist, pacifist, anti-militaristic, anything that wasn't seen with that sort of that Nazi ethos or ethic.
Hitler's rule transformed Berlin from a liberal powerhouse of culture to the capital of a vicious totalitarian state. By the end of the war, however, the city was paying a bitter price for its leader's brutal foreign policy.
What was this building?
It was a monastery.
And I'm guessing bomb damage?
Exactly. This is bomb damage from 1945, April the 3rd. There were a couple of bombing raids on that particular evening. There were about 33 fatalities.
Do you know how damaged the city was?
16 square kilometres of Berlin was just completely devastated.
Crying out loud.
The ruins of this building are a reminder of the punishing damage inflicted by Allied bombers.
During the war, my grandmother was in Plymouth with 3 kids, and my mum was a baby. She suffered air raids, and she remembers towards the end of the war being out on her doorstep with her neighbours watching waves of American and British bombers on their way to Germany, and her neighbours were cheering, and she was cheering as well. She said she went in her house, sorry, I get a bit emotional, and she said to me, which I found extraordinary, she said she held my mum to her, and all she could think was there were German women with their children having no idea what was heading for them. And she said to me, even though she'd gone through, all the way through the war, she said if she'd have had the ability that night to stop them, she would have done. I find that extraordinary.
It must have been horrendous. Horrific.
From the west of Berlin.
The preservation of these ruins is just one way that later generations in Berlin have chosen to confront, not hide, the horror of war. And in the very centre of the city is one of the country's most moving reminders of the crimes of Berlin's Nazi past.
And we are now at the memorial dedicated to the murdered Jews of Europe.
It's not what I imagined it to be. It's enormous, great big grey concrete blocks. What does it mean?
It's very abstract, isn't it? But the designer, Peter Eisenman, he's left it pretty much open to the imagination without why it was constructed like this.
It's most certainly sombre. Right now, it's quite claustrophobic, actually.
Some people think that the oppressive atmosphere in the centre of the memorial represents the sheer horror of the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews were killed. But as you walk through the site, there's a shift.
Then as you come out, leaving through the memorial site, you come out into the light. You see the trees. Could that represent growth, new beginnings of the Jewish people who survived World War II? And I like that positive aspect of the memorial site as you exit back into the sunlight, like right here.
This is vast. I mean, there's no escaping it. This is absolutely huge. This isn't a hidden apology, is it?
Not at all, not at all. So if you come here as an international or domestic tourist, I mean, you're almost forced upon you to think about this historical past here in Berlin. It's about remembering what happened and educate and then move forward as a population.
In 1945, Berlin stood in ruins. To help rebuild the city in the decades after the war, immigrants were invited in from all over Europe, and it's settlers from one particular country who gave modern Berlin one of its most popular dishes.
One minute. Sir, can I have doner kebab, please?
That's one big doner.
One big doner. Whoa, look at that. It does look good, doesn't it? Hey? Lovely. Do you know what? If you don't want to eat it, stick a frame around it. That is a beautiful thing.
Today, there are over 175,000 people of Turkish background living in Berlin, and while you might think of the doner as a solely Turkish classic, Germany has a good claim at being the home of the version of the kebab we all love on the way home from the pub.
The story is there's always been doner meat available in Turkey, but it comes with rice. It was the Turkish people that came to Germany that decided to put it in the bread, made it into the kebab that we now know, that successfully went around the world.
Today, there are around 4,000 kebab shops in Berlin, with many Berliners considering the doner the city's best-loved dish. And it's easy to see why.
That, my friends, is a thing of wonder. That bread is really crispy, soft on the inside. Some of the meat has got crispy bits on it, how you'd love it, but the meat itself is succulent. That is delicious.
With a doner this good, it's like I'm back on the Old Kent Road in 1979. And while the days of my youth might be some way behind me, I've still got an itch for a bit of a wild night out. Some of the edgiest of the city's 280 nightlife venues are in the east of the city around the Friedrichshain-Kreuzberg district.
If there's one thing Berlin is famous for, it's its nightlife. Now, personally, I think I'm a bit old for some full-on hardcore raving, but I've arranged to meet someone who said they can show me the ropes.
I've read about a famous Berliner called Comet Bernhard, who's apparently an expert on Berlin's youthful clubbing scene. So I'm meeting him along with his agent.
Hello.
Hey, hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, hello.
Good to meet you.
Hello.
Are you Comet?
No, ich bin Comet.
You are Comet. You are Comet. Sit down, sit down. Comet, you are not what I expected. Can I ask a personal question? How old are you?
71.
71. And you are an expert on Berlin nightlife?
Ich würde sagen,
Berlin nightlife is famous throughout the world. Definitely in the UK, it is legendary. Why?
das Wichtigste war, vor vielen, vielen Jahren, als ich noch nicht hier war, die Stadt hat keine Sperrzeit, wie sie sonst überall ist. Das heißt, die Stadt war schon vor 10, 20, 30, 40 Jahren. Das heißt, die Freiheit war nach dem Krieg riesig groß.
When did this love of nightlife and clubs, when did it start for you?
Die Liebe zum Nachtleben, die hat begonnen, als ich 40 Jahre alt und ins Partyleben zu gehen.
Why not stay at home, have a cup of hot chocolate?
Es ist auch anstrengend und ich mag Anstrengung. Es ist ein Sport.
To avoid rusty joints causing accidents on the dance floor, Comet starts each night out with a unique stretching regime.
Die Hände so, hier, da, so. Umlegen. Ja. Kein Problem.
You are making me feel exhausted.
Right, time for us to hit the town. And tonight there can be no excuses for not going large.
Ciao, bis zum nächsten Mal.
I can't say I'm too old because he's 71.
After warming up with a few beers, it soon looks like we've got company. As Berliner's premier nightclubbing pensioner, Comet's clearly got a serious fan base.
Everybody knows it. That man is a Berliner A-list celeb.
Once Comet's finished with his meet and greets, he's keen to get me dancing. Luckily, when it comes to AAA clubs, there's no shortage in Berlin.
Oh, hey, Patrick, sag ihm, das ist die beste Disco von Berlin. Best Disco.
Best disco in Berlin. What is that?
No need to adjust your set. The best club in Berlin really is a phone box. Well, never say I don't try new things. In any normal circumstances, I'd obviously be busting some serious moves of my own here. Sadly, in a venue this size, I feel there's really only room for one John Travolta.
It's finished. Come on.
Oh my God!
That was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. Not really my sort of music, not really my sort of venue. I prefer things slightly bigger, perhaps so you can sit down. I feel I'm getting on a bit, but it's been a very different sort of evening. Shall we? Come on, I know a good place that does cocoa. Cocoa and biscuits, you'll like.
Hot chocolate.
Coming up, I get a crash course in Berlin street art
Wow, that is fantastic.
and sample one of Germany's most celebrated culinary traditions.
This may be one of the most famous cakes in the world.
Here's your chance to win a fun weekend away for two. Choose from 6 European spots we visited this series to spend 2 epic nights. You'll enjoy a local activity on us and have £1,000 to spend. So to enter, text FUN to 65555 or post your name and phone number to FUN, PO Box 7557 Derby DE1 0NP. Rules and privacy policy at channel5.com/win. Good luck. It's my final day in Berlin. But before I pack up and head home, I want to make the most of the time I have left.
For art lovers, there is no shortage of places to visit in this city. Berlin has some of the best fine art galleries in the world. However, if you want something a bit more contemporary, a bit more edgy, you need to hit the streets. Rob, Greg, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you, mate. Should we go look at Smart?
I'd love to. Is it all like friendly?
Rob Smith offers tours of some of the city's most iconic street art.
Look, we get street art everywhere, right? But Berlin, there's just loads of it. Why? Why so much here?
Berlin's always been a rebellious city. It's a creative city. Between the Imperials, the Weimar, the Nazis, the East German split, it's always been a city of the people because the bosses have come and gone throughout the years.
Are you able to show me some examples, some of your favourite?
I'd love to.
The RAW complex in the east of the city used to be home to an old railway shed, but today it's been converted into an area full of bars, clubs and extraordinary street art.
Now that I really like. I like all the dripping dots.
Yeah, there's definitely an impressionist angle here. So the artist is an Australian. His name's Jimmy C.
Is this spray paint?
It is. He's getting the can as close as he can to the wall and spraying it in a sustained, controlled burst.
I like that a lot. Now that I could have on my wall at home.
I'm blown away by just how beautiful some of Berlin's street art can be. And hidden behind the urban spree bar is one of the most spectacular pieces of all.
Wow. Well, that's obviously a toucan.
It's actually by a Portuguese artist called Bordalo too. Now look really closely at the body. Do you see what you've got in there?
You've got car parts and bits of bicycle.
Look, Bordalo's work is about the disposable society that we live in. We buy, eat and consume objects without much thought. He brings them together, turning it into a beautiful reflection of the natural world.
I love that. I really like that.
Yeah.
Looking at all this street art makes me want to go a bit Banksy myself. So Rob's given me a tip-off to visit the Alternative Berlin Workshop, a place where you can go to learn some spray paint basics. My teacher is Alex Privatos.
Excuse me, Alex? Greg?
Hi, nice to meet
Man, what a space this is.
Incredible, huh? This is where we do our workshops. We teach people how to paint.
Can you show me some basic principles?
Yeah, sure. Let's grab our cans and let's paint.
Fantastic.
So the first thing to do, we're creating, let's say, a crazy sky. And then we're gonna fade in inside some orange and some yellow.
I'll help.
Come on.
Right.
So, okay, yeah, very nice. Hey, really good, Greg. Shake that spray can a little bit more.
After some teething troubles,
Got paint in my ear. He didn't get paint. Look.
I'm soon getting the knack.
You know what we got there? We got a California sunset.
While I perfect the background, it looks like I've inspired Alex to create a distinctive design for the final stencil.
So, what do you think about that?
Ha! That is fantastic.
You want to spray this?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
After Alex has added a few final touches and one last layer with the stencil, it's time to see what we've created.
Wow.
It's awesome.
Wow, that is fantastic. Yeah. I love that. Listen, you don't know how happy I am with this. You are a good teacher.
And I think you're ready for the streets, huh?
I'm going to call myself Greggsy.
Now I've got in touch with my edgier side. For my last stop in the city, I'm after something a little more traditional.
Jessica? Greg.
Nice
hello.
to meet you. Hi.
I've come to the oldest bakery in Berlin, the Siebert Bakery, to meet food writer Jessica Jungbacker.
Nice. Nice little bakers. Right.
Hallo, wir würden gerne was bestellen. Und zwar hätten wir einmal...
She's an expert on a classic Berlin ritual.
There's lots of people here having coffee and cake. Have they all got a sweet tooth?
Yeah, so it's actually part of a German tradition. It's called Kaffee und Kuchen.
Kaffee und Kuchen?
Yeah, it simply means coffee and cake. So you would meet on a leisurely Sunday afternoon with your family and friends, have some cake, have some coffee.
That is a nice tradition.
It was first established in the 17th century. It was only reserved for the more rich people.
In the 17th century, coffee would have been really expensive and sugar would have been hugely expensive.
But then over the centuries, it became available to just normal people, and now it's part of everyday life.
Do you know in Britain we have afternoon tea?
Yeah, I heard it's quite similar.
For our spot of Cafe and Kirchen, Jessica's chosen some mouth-watering German specialities. And one in particular looks very familiar.
This is a Pfannkuchen. It means pancake, but of course it doesn't look like a pancake. It's the Berlin version of a donut. So it's originally from Berlin, but it's popular all around Germany. And there we would call it Berliner.
That's the famous Berliner.
Yeah, but here you would never say a Berliner. It's a Pfannkuchen because the people of Berlin are also called Berliners, so you wouldn't eat your own people.
From now on, I'm going to think of it as a cannibal cake.
Oh, what? When you have this white rim around, it means that the Pfannkuchen is of high quality. Because the dough is really fluffy, you don't want to have like a really dense dough, and it keeps swimming in the fat while it's fried.
So when it's frying, it rises up.
Yeah.
It's light, it sits on the oil, it doesn't sink down. Brilliant! Should we taste?
Go for it.
Look at that. A jam donut where I come from is nearly always raspberry jam. It's bright red.
Yes.
What is this?
This is actually plum jam.
That plum jam is really deep and rich. It's more like a fruity sauce for meat. That is delicious. And that may be the lightest donut I've ever tasted. Can we get on to my favourite? Look at that.
You might know it as a Black Forest cake.
Oh, mate. This may be one of the most famous cakes in the world. You would not know because you were not born. But in the 1970s, if you were going to have like a big Sunday lunch or even a dinner party, this cake would come out. Nobody made it. Everybody bought one. That is divine. That is so light. If it was cold, you'd think you were eating an ice cream. Really, really light whipped cream, very light sponge, and a lovely, beautiful sweet cherry, almost like a bubble gum. That is absolutely bang-on delicious. Can I be really, really honest with you? When I came in here, it looked like a small baker's shop. It wasn't until I started eating it that I realised just how good it was. I've had a great few days in Berlin. Look, it's not the sort of place where you lounge by the pool or spend whole afternoons sipping cocktails in the square, but it is a city of great transformation. I don't think any city has had such a turbulent 20th century as Berlin, but it's come out of that to become one of the most creative and I think bohemian cities in Europe. I am very, very much looking forward to coming back.
And Gregg is back with another new big weekend away next Friday at 8. On Sunday night at 7, we've got some deliciousness to round off the weekend in the new series of The Wonderful World of Chocolate. Just try to resist. Next tonight, we're crossing the snowy peaks of the